doing the uncomfortable. Now, I get it. None of us want to do things that we don't like to do, or that don't feel good, or that stretches us or pushes us past our comfort zone. But I want you to think about it just for a moment. As you're building a business, as you're building a business coaching practice, the reality is growth comes from stretching. Look at, I don't love to work out. It's not my first love. It's not something that I just enjoy to do. Now, some people do, but many people don't. However, you probably are very aware that the majority of growth comes specifically from stretching and pushing muscles to the limit. That's where they expand. That's where they get bigger and so on. However, doing some of those exercises, doing some of those motions, doing some of that heavy lifting that I don't enjoy to do is where you're able to find growth. So the goal here is to understand as we're building anything is that we begin to recognize that being uncomfortable is actually where amazing things can happen. Being uncomfortable is actually where we learn. Being uncomfortable and getting into discomfort, if you will, is where we're able to actually see maximum output. 3 things I want to share with you really quickly that are just small ways to just embrace this idea that discomfort is where growth happens. The first thing is to just deconstruct fear, all right, into manageable steps. So deconstruct fear into manageable steps. Let's put this into a practical perspective. Let's say we're building a business coaching practice, and one of the things that we're going to do, if this is the strategy you choose, we're going to call 50 people today. Maybe you've met some people, you have referrals, whatever, but you've assembled a list of about 50 people. But the idea of calling people like that out of nowhere in your mind seems just like a massive mountain that's like, man, I don't do that. I don't like cold calling. And I'm not saying that you got to like cold calling, by the way. I'm just using this as an example. But rather than looking at it as this big, massive mountain of 50 people, for some people, that can just seem insurmountable. How in the world can I call that many people? Versus, and I know this is going to sound elementary, but I want you to just follow me here. Break it down into manageable steps. Call 3 people. Like your end goal may be to call 50 people, but you need to start to recite and rehearse and repeat. I'm just going to call 3 people. That's it. Like my next few minutes, I'm going to reach out to 3 people. Because here's what's going to happen. When you reach out to those 3 people, you're going to recognize, that wasn't that big of a deal. Then guess what you're going to do? You probably already know. I'm going to call 3 more people. And then 3 more. When you start to kind of chunk things down into small, actionable steps, things become, it's a lot more simple to mentally process. You got to understand, and I need to understand, that so much is at work against us from just a mental perspective for a lot of different reasons. Everybody's wired different, right? In the way that you're wired, the way I'm wired, it could be one thing. But our experiences as we grow up, as we mature, you look at somebody who may have come through an abusive childhood versus somebody who may have had just everything given to them and they just didn't have the same kind of angst and challenges or whatever. Well, even though those individuals could be wired the exact same way, life feels very different on how they think because of their backgrounds, their experiences, and their history, right? And so this is why emotionally we all respond differently, but if we're not careful, we allow the emotions to take over and ruin us and control us. And by the way, as a believer and as a Christ follower, the enemy's at play here. And this is the reason why we want to take some simple strategies and put them into practice. In this case, we want to make them to kind of just eradicate the fear by making things smaller and manageable. That'll take that what seems like this big mountain, and again, calling people out of nowhere is just an example. It could be doing a lot of different things. Whatever it is that you fear, you want to process it, by the way, deconstructing fear. You want to handle the fear by making things much more smaller and manageable. And the next thing is, let's say that we'll use the example of going to a networking event. All right. Some people are like, I don't know people there. I'm not fast on my feet, whatever. We'll start to tell ourselves all these different things. And the problem is that we end up focusing mostly on going to the networking event, right? And while that may be the actual activity and the action that we're going to do, the focus should be on the result. So we're not just going to a networking event and meeting strangers. We are building legitimate relationships where some of those relationships could turn into long-term paying clients where you get to play a part as a badge of honor in their growth in their business. So from a standpoint of service, from a standpoint of serving, we look at it very, very different. I'm going to get focused on, hey, when I go to this networking event, I'm going to meet, 2 or 3 people that God's going to use me to be able to make an impact in their business. And it's not even while we focus on strategically building profits in the business as strategists, the real goal is the impact that they can do. They can potentially pay people better. They can potentially expand. That's going to add more jobs and so on. So the role and the goal is all about, hey, I get to play a part here and get to connect to individuals that I might be able to serve them in a capacity to help their growth. That's the focus. Last thing, this is the big one, is when we are uncomfortable, we tend to avoid. When we have discomfort, we tend to push off. When we are just in a state of anxiety about something and I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month. One of my favorite things is, not favorite per se, but one of the most interesting things, how many people, when you're in the last week of a month, you're like, you know what? I'm going to tackle that at the beginning of the month. It's a new month. I'll have new energy and so on. But here's the reality. What you avoid controls you. I want you to process that. You might even want to write that one down. What you avoid controls you. And what you avoid over and over and over in our minds gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I'll never forget years ago, I was probably, 3, 4, 5 years of age. Can't remember exactly what the what age I was. But my dad, I'll never forget, he wanted me to jump off the diving board. They don't have a lot of those anymore in just the normal swimming pools. And but he wanted me to jump off the diving board. And I just didn't want to do it. I kept, no, next week, it's about like next year, I'll never forget how many times we had this conversation. And then he finally said to me, I'll tell you what, you jump off that diving board, I'm going to catch you. And I'm like, fine. I probably didn't say fine, but that's just the way I remembered it many moons ago, right? And so, as you can probably see this is going, I jump in, and he said he was going to catch me. And while he did catch me, he didn't catch me originally. However, here's what happened. And you probably experienced something like this too. I jumped in and recognized, one, that wasn't nearly that big of a deal that I had been avoiding and thinking about and scared to death over it. I watched everybody else jump in. I watched my family, my sister and my cousins, whatever. They were jumping in, but I was scared. I feared it. But when I jumped in that first time and the feeling of it, I realized, wait a minute, this is fun. This was exciting. And all of a sudden, guess what I wanted to do? I wanted to do it again. The same moment. Think about your life right now. What is it that you might be avoiding? What is it that you might be uncomfortable with? What is it that you've been just pushing off and procrastinating because of the fear of whatever, the fear of the unknown, the fear of rejection, the fear of challenge, the fear of what if it doesn't work, all these different things. What if you did it and it was so incredibly different and it was so incredibly awesome that you're like, dude, I actually like doing this. I want to challenge you today. Do not let the enemy use fear as a tactic to prevent you from growth, right? And we often look at, when we're like in a business coaching scenario, we look at, I need to go get 10 clients. And we get so focused on the client, the relationship, the ask and the proposal and all these different things. While those are things we have to do, our focus should be on the greater side of what happens when we get those 10 clients, right? And it's not all about money. But money is a resource, right? You have to make a living. You have to pay the mortgage. You have to buy a car, all these different things. But what does it solve? What does money as a resource solve for your life? How are you able to give back to the community? How can you give back to your church? How can you give back to those that are in need? Like, that's what you wrap your mind around. And the more you wrap your mind around on the end goal and the result of what can happen, these things right here, they're just stepping stones to do it. But if we get our minds wrapped around the axle of just the part that we don't like, it's likely not going to go away. God's given you the ability, period. We can do all things through Christ. You know that scripture. Own it, learn it, live it out. That's the goal. And if you don't live it out, what good is it for you? If all you do is you read something like that and you even pray about it for that matter, but you don't take the action to go do it, at some point, break them down into small chunks, deconstruct the fear, stop avoiding the obvious that actually might be something that you like. Okay? Until next time, take care.